Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. Really excited to introduce a special celebrity physician guest this afternoon, Dr. Huf Pandya from UCSF and Benioff up in San Francisco, one of the greatest medical facilities in the world. And we're going to talk a little Niners, a little injuries. Hopefully we'll get a little time for some Warriors too at the end because I know he's a big Dubs fan like myself. Anyway, here is Dr. Pandya, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, once again, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of everything you do on social media. Obviously, we've interacted, on that platform as well too. So it's a pleasure to be on. I am an orthopedic surgeon. I spend more than just my time on Twitter. I know that's always the joke. I work, as you mentioned, at UCSF. I do a lot of adolescent and pediatric sports medicine, and have a lot of research interest in professional athletes' injuries, and that's kind of led me down this path of kind of tweeting and doing interviews about these professional athlete injuries. And I'm a huge sports fan, and I always felt growing up that there was this disconnect between injuries that players were having. Fans didn't really know what was going on, and they'd be very frustrated and not have the information. So, as I kind of chose my career into orthopedic surgery and then, was obviously still a sports fan, I felt there was kind of a gap for that. And, I enjoy interacting with fans. It's a way that I can take my profession and still take part in sports. So it's been a blast.
Well, thanks for all you do. We all, us lay people, all really appreciate it, helping us figure out what's going on with our players when they'll be back, what to expect, because a lot of teams are a little bit cagey about giving that information out. They try, I think, that fog of war, try to keep things as mysterious as possible, especially Kyle Shanahan, to keep from giving any advantage possible to our opponents. So speaking of some opponents, we had the bye week obviously this last weekend, so no Niner game. But a week ago Sunday, we played the Rams at Levi's South, and great game. A big win, and oddly enough, no injuries in that game, especially since it's on artificial turf where the Niners tend to have big problems. But give me your thoughts on the game and the outlook for the Niners and Rams moving forward.
I think it's amazing just seeing the difference. I mean, how much McCaffrey makes. We talk about football. Obviously, there's 22 players and obviously everyone on the bench, but how much just one impactful player really opens up the offense. And I think how we perceive Jimmy Garoppolo as well too is going to change a lot with McCaffrey there. In terms of statistics, how the team's winning. It was just amazing to see what the team could do with someone like that there, who could provide that safety valve outlet. And what excites me even more is that the team had such a good performance with so many players out. And then you come off the bye week, DeeBo's back, you've got healthy other individuals coming back, and it just really looks positive moving forward. And I really do think, barring Geno Smith continuing to play amazing, they're really in the driver's seat in the NFC West. And I just think the Rams, I mean, they've got injuries as well too, and Stafford's older, but I think on paper the 49ers have the better team, and it's destiny's in their control, which I think is amazing. And a couple weeks ago, everyone was like, oh, what's going on? Now it's suddenly like McCaffrey comes on, the team's energized, everyone's going to be healthy. It's going to be great.
No doubt about it. I'm lockstep, total agreement with you on all of that, 100%. Now, so let's launch right in with some sort of like injuries, some players. I lumped these two together, which is kind of interesting because obviously Jason Verrett is a 49er and OBJ isn't just yet, but there's a lot of talk about that going around. The reason I put them together is because they both had double ACLs on the same leg, which is pretty brutal. But tell me a little bit about your outlook for both of them.
Yeah, when you look at NFL players in general, let's think of it like a first-time ACL. The groups that have the hardest time coming back: wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks. And a lot of that has to just simply due to the fact that there's a lot of agility, there's a lot of cutting, there's a lot of speed, which places a lot of strain on your ACL. So even just having a first-time tear in that leg, you're already worried about the ability to perform. Then you get a second-time tear in the leg, and inability to even play in the NFL, regardless of what position you are at, is much more difficult. And then to come back to that position to be effective, I think it's hard. The data stacked against you. I mean, I think for OBJ, a lot of people are remembering what he was before the injury, even maybe what he was even with that first ACL. But I think it's hard to imagine him being very effective in the way that he was before coming off that. Now, can he be a possession receiver? Can he be someone who goes down the middle and catches 5, 10, 15-yard passes? It could be a red zone target. Absolutely, but you're not going to get that same type of production. And I think with Verrett, actually, what's pretty remarkable and probably speaks to how phenomenal a football player he is besides his ACL, he's had Achilles, he's had shoulder surgery, and he keeps coming back. Shanahan keeps wanting to bring him back. So that speaks volumes just how phenomenal an athlete is. Players who go through this in the NFL just don't come back on rosters. People don't keep him on the IR and want them to come back. So he clearly is special, has some skill there. But I think once again, people have to temper their expectations, because even though performance goes down, the thing that everyone needs to understand is that there's more likely to be soreness. They're more likely going to be 1 to 2 weeks where you have to take off because things are acting up. So a lot of the fan base has to be patient with it and also temper their expectations. These aren't the players that they were pre-injury. They're different just due to the nature of, no matter how good we've gotten with fixing these injuries, there's going to be a little bit of a downfall in their statistics.
It's interesting. Yeah, I was tweeting with Greg Cohn a little bit about this today. I saw you did too. And, I made a point that there was a report going around that for OBJ, that his first surgery maybe wasn't done properly, and that led to complications, and that he was having trouble before the ACL actually tore in the Super Bowl. So that maybe now that a different physician, I won't name any names of the first or second, but the more recent one is highly renowned, is maybe one of the best in the business. And so maybe they're saying he might actually be as good as before, or they're trying to even say better, some people were. But it sounds like that might be just reports and, wishful thinking more than something that you would actually, be okay with investing in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's hard to say that. It's always with a lot of these reports, what's an agent saying, what are people, tweeting about, etc. I think in general, yes, a surgery can probably, let's just assume that there was something, his knee wasn't stable, he was having pain. Even the fact that if you can address those things, anytime a knee is operated on, there's going to be, some secondary effects from that. And then I think more importantly, is just simply the time off. For these athletes as they get older, even if everything's addressed, you're 9 to 12 months off, you're not playing, you've had these breaks. So even the conditioning impact is pretty big. But hopefully for him, he's an exciting player. I hope he catches on and he's able to provide what they need. He clearly has the skill set, and hopefully his body can keep up with him. Hopefully that ends up happening.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I still kind of hope we get him, but it does make me a little bit nervous, 100%, about, will he ever be the same? Like you said, will he need time off? Will he have to take games off? And even though that report came out, let's just say we believe that report. I seem to recall a similar report about Javon Kinlaw, that the same physician, in fact, performed both surgeries for OBJ's second and Javon Kinlaw's ACL were performed by the same surgeon, and he supposedly did a clean out surgery prior to the ACL surgery, and then it was supposed to be all rosy. And now look at Javon Kinlaw; he missed a couple games and he went on IR. He's out through at least this Chargers game, but it doesn't sound like he'll be back the following week for the Cardinals in Mexico City. But I guess that's kind of a good segue to talk about our defensive tackles who've been out for a while. Javon Kinlaw, who is on IR, and Arik Armstead, who I think would have been put on IR. But, I think we were just worried about not being able to bring enough people back from IR. You have a limit of, I forget how many it is per season, and we were pushing up on that, and so I think they decided it was better to sacrifice the roster spot while he was out than to not be able to bring him back. And then I guess I just saw a report recently that I guess he had a hairline fracture in his foot, which nobody talked about for weeks and weeks. It's kind of like out of the blue, if you will. But give me your thoughts on these two.
Yeah, so I think with Kinlaw, absolutely. I think, the thing with him, before any surgery was that, he was having knee symptoms and he was keep getting irritated. Initially when everyone's like, why, how could they not know when his ACL was torn and this, that, and the other? And I think one of the key things to understand with ACL injuries and things like that is that they're dynamic structures. So a lot of times you'll get an MRI, it looks okay, or their exam's okay, but then, suddenly they're under anesthesia, you're doing a surgery, and you're like, oh, wow, even though your ACL may look good or it may just look a little bit abnormal, suddenly you're testing the knee when someone's asleep and you're like, oh, your knee's unstable. And we're pretty predictable that with ACL surgery you can get the knee stable. The larger issue is that, what damage did Kinlaw have in his knee, or what wear and tear developed before the surgery that you potentially couldn't reverse? And I think the more important thing is that even though we've gotten really good at these surgeries, Kinlaw is a large human being. He's very large. He's putting a lot of force on his ACL, and I think if you look back at football 15, 20 years ago, people his size and his muscular strength and his explosiveness just didn't exist. And as larger players get faster, they do more things where, defensive linemen are playing like running backs in terms of their agility. Are their joints going to be able to hold up? So this may not necessarily be an issue in terms of is something wrong with Kinlaw's knee or is something wrong with the surgery that was done. It's just simply the fact that we're really at the kind of the high end of what people that big can do with their knees. And is this just the secondary effect of doing that? So, I think that with Kinlaw, it's his first season back. I mean, I think he's a large, obviously large and has a lot of muscle that hopefully whatever symptoms he's having are going to calm down and he'll be impactful. But I know the 49er fan base is getting very frustrated with that. But you see, when he's healthy, he's an amazing athlete. So hopefully he can get his situation, kind of turned around and be ready to go. I think for Armstead, a lot of this is, people hear plantar fasciitis initially and they're like, oh, that's something that old people get. Like how could a football player not play, with plantar fasciitis? And I think for a large player as well, too, the plantar fascia is so important for pushing off, for cutting, for doing things on your foot. And if that's sore, it's really impossible to play. So it can seem like a minor injury, but if you have that degree of pain in your foot, you just can't do normal football activities. And then he gets this report of a hairline fracture, and people say, well, how come we didn't hear about this? And, a lot of times with, you get x-rays, you get MRIs early on, and you can't tell those things. And then a couple weeks later, as swelling goes down, as things become a little more clear, you'll notice, oh, wait, there actually was something there. Which kind of makes sense because it did seem a little bit like he was having pain. There wasn't quite a report of what exactly was going on. And now, like you said, I think there was a report yesterday that he had that. So that does make a little bit more sense. And could that have been an injury that developed because he was compensating from his plantar fasciitis on the other side, or something that happened when he tried to play? It's hard to say, but luckily, with all these things, that shouldn't be an issue with him moving forward, and he should be once again ready to contribute as they make this stretch run, hopefully for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I was doing a little quick math with it. They said 4 to 6 weeks, and so it sounded like he'd be back either next week or the week after was sort of what I was coming up with. So hopefully we'll see Arik Armstead in Mexico City versus the Cards. Probably the big one that everybody wants to know about is Trey Lance. He obviously, has the broken ankle, but also 2 torn ligaments in the ankle on both sides. Tell us a little bit about that one, Dr. Pandya.
Yeah,
please.
So, we hear about that, and people hear break and ligament. I mean, this is kind of from the reports. Obviously, I haven't, seen his x-rays or seen the actual reports, but this is pretty much your standard ankle fracture. This is not something that is, career altering or, so out of the blue. I mean, this is what you see when someone tears their ankle, tears a ligament, breaks their ankle. This is pretty much what you would see. So in terms of if you look at, how this is going to impact him moving forward, as long as his bone heals, his ligament will heal fine as well too, this shouldn't impact him moving forward from a structural standpoint. I mean, it's something people have happen every day. I think the harder thing to predict is how is this going to impact his confidence in terms of being a mobile quarterback. And not to bring up Raiders, but Derek Carr had a similar injury a couple of years ago in terms of an ankle fracture, and that first season back, a lot of people were saying, look, he just didn't look confident. He was, seemed a little hesitant, wasn't willing to run. So I think that can have a bigger impact in terms of performances. You break this ankle, are you ready to have people fall at your ankle similar to what happened before? So I don't necessarily feel that there'll be any limitations in terms of him physically going into next season. I mean, if he wasn't potentially like a, someone who was a high draft pick, and maybe if he was a defensive lineman or a running back, I mean, there is a possibility with this injury this early on, he could have made it back in December or January, but he's a quarterback, he's mobile, you want to make sure he's fine. But I don't think that should be his limitation next year. How mobile he'll be, how confident he'll be, that'll be wait to be seen. But he's young, he's healthy, so hopefully that'll all play in his favor as well too.
Awesome. That's good news. I mean, yeah, we're just hoping for no setbacks, obviously, that are possible with a serious injury. And like you said, my concern is both two-part, the physical side and then obviously the mental side of getting back that confidence and really believing in it so that he can play, up to hopefully as well as he did or close to it when he comes back. Another big one that people probably want to know about, sounds like he'll be back, but he's obviously a huge key to our team, just signed a huge contract in the offseason. And tell us a little bit about your thoughts on DeeBo, Samuel.
Yeah, I think DeeBo, obviously, everyone's always been concerned with all these, soft tissue injuries he's had, hamstrings, etc. And this is the byproduct of the way DeeBo plays. I mean, he's a running back, wide receiver. He had these injury issues, even when he was in college. And you take a player who's, it's not necessarily the amount he's doing right now, but it's the ability to have to change how your body works. It's different when you're playing at a running back position. It's different when you're a wide receiver. It's different when you're kind of having to change positions, and the stress on the body is a lot. And what makes him great is also what sets him up for these injury risks as well too. And I mentioned this, I think, when McCaffrey got signed. I think the best thing for DeeBo's health is having Christian McCaffrey there, because that load of him having to come out and do all these positions lessens because you have someone else there. So I think it's going to work hand in hand for both of them. In fact, you look at McCaffrey's injury history and DeeBo's injury history, like, they're both players who had to carry a lot of load and play multiple positions. Now suddenly you have both of them on the field together where there's someone else to kind of take that off. So I think it's both great for their career longevity to be playing against one another, with one another. So I do think that DeeBo coming back, it'll probably set him up well to not have to go in there and touch the ball 20, 30, 40 times, having McCaffrey there at his side. And it sounds like his issue was more precautionary than anything else. And I think that's the benefit of having McCaffrey. What may not have been precautionary, where you'd have to look, you got DeeBo, you got to get out there, we're not going to win. Now you have that ability to kind of ease him back in and keep him explosive and healthy. And not that there's ever a good time to get hurt, but having this bye week kind of gives them that extra time as well too. So I think we'll see the same explosive DeeBo. In fact, he may actually be healthier going into the season because of that ability not to have 30 touches a game with McCaffrey on the roster.
Oh boy, that's so exciting. I can't wait to see the two of them in action. Obviously, we saw a little bit of limited Christian McCaffrey against the Chiefs, but he didn't know the playbook, and it's clearly nothing like we saw in the Rams game. It's going to be so exciting to see them. And yes, I mean, I think it makes total sense that they'll each limit each other's workload. And not only those two, but, Kittle and Ayuk will help keep pressure off of the all will help each other in that way. So that's really exciting. Cool. And then I guess next on my list, one I'm really excited about this week, honestly, like DeeBo's the big name coming back, but I think this guy, Dre Greenlaw, might be the most important just because of the softness we've had up the middle without Arik Armstead, without Javon Kinlaw. Oh wait, sorry, my bad. Let's see here. I meant to talk about Azeez Al-Shire, and I guess I don't have him on. Let me
talk about him. Not a problem.
Yeah, let me just make a quick banner here. But yeah. But yeah, Azeez really excites me because we've been weak up the middle with Arik Armstead, with Kinlaw out, and then obviously Dre Greenlaw more recently going out. We had a lot of weakness up the middle, especially against the run. So I'm excited to have Azeez back. But tell me a little bit about his injury.
Yeah, so it sounded like there was this whole string of MCL injuries early on. Obviously Elijah as well too. The good news for NFL players who have an MCL injury, and the MCL being kind of that ligament on the inside of the knee, is that they pretty predictably heal. And there's very minimal impact in terms of performance when they come back. So it's not like, a meniscus or an ACL or even sometimes even a hamstring or groin or things like that, is that we know pretty well how they're going to heal. Things you can do in terms of bracing to allow players to feel stable, particularly at the linebacker position where you're able to react and have time to kind of see what's happening, as opposed to being a running back or wide receiver where you have to kind of instantly cut on that leg. So I think it's going to be very exciting to have him back with minimal chance in terms of, unless he gets a blow, to have kind of residual effects from that. And 8 weeks typically is what you see for these kind of grade 2 partial tear, potentially grade 3 injuries that obviously we don't know the exact injury for profile for him, but I expect him to be impactful to come back. And one of the silver linings for a lot of these injuries for these players that you are obviously, when you're rehabbing from a knee or things like that, you're saving your body, particularly the defensive position, from all that wear and tear that comes. So for a lot of these players who've been resting, just rehabbing an MCL, you don't have all that secondary soft tissue injury that comes by week 7, week 8. So these players may come back and look more explosive, look fresher, which will kind of give them a jolt. But I expect that, particularly at the linebacker position, it's going to be great for the 49ers to have them back.
Perfect, thank you. And I've got Callie Young here in the audience. He had wanted to know about Javon Kinlaw, which we covered. He also mentioned that we got Elijah Mitchell coming back, which should help. So maybe we should chat a little bit about Elijah. Yeah,
no, it's interesting. Elijah was playing so well and kind of kept on that trend of 49ers running backs unfortunately getting hurt. The tougher thing I think for running backs coming off an MCL is that even though they do end up kind of at the same time point of not having an impact on their statistics, it can be a little harder to come back initially at the running back position, particularly in the offense that Shanahan runs, where there's the running back is forced to make quick cuts very quickly and kind of run up the middle. So Part of that is there's more strain on that MCL, so the ability to kind of gain short, explosive plays is a little bit harder. And then more so for a running back, because there's more conditioning and more kind of speed work you need to do, it can be kind of a slower ramp up for them in terms of get back up to speed. So whereas a linebacker can jump back in, or defensive lineman, for running back it can be a little bit harder initially. Luckily, once again, because we have McCaffrey, that's going to be another blessing in disguise for Mitchell as well too. It's just another weapon that's there to kind of take the load off him. And I do see that where we may see Mitchell in kind of an ideal situation is maybe as like a 1 to 2, times a series coming in, being a change of pace back. But I think it may take him a little bit longer to ramp back up. We may not necessarily see those large explosive runs from him early on. But once again, I think that the data does suggest that he should be fine come the the tail end of the season where we really need him to be a change of pace back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those are three MCLs, right? We had Elijah Mitchell week 1. We had Azeez Al-Shire week 3 against the Broncos. And then we had Colton McKivitz week 4 against the Rams. So, and we're saying 8 weeks. So when we say 8 weeks, is that like 8 weeks from the next week? So like, let's say for Mitchell, it's game 1 plus 8 is week 9. Now he's back for the week 10 against the Chargers. I guess the better one would be Azeez Al-Shire, who was week 3 against the Broncos. 8 weeks would put us to week 11, right? So he's actually getting back a little bit early. Yeah. It's more like 6 to 8 weeks for an MCL then, yeah. Of that grade?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So typically we usually say 6 to 8 weeks for like grade 2, which is a partial tear of the MCL. And a lot of that varies based on the position, as well too, like how quickly they can get back.
Right. Because then we have McKivitz, who was the next week, and he's coming back even a week earlier than Azeez, who came back early. And that makes total sense because he's an offensive tackle, not exactly an agility position, more agile than a guard or a center, but still nothing compared, like you said, to a running back or wide receiver. Okay, cool. That's just what I was trying to figure out when they say 8 weeks, whether it was like 8 weeks in between the game they last played and or if it was that 8th week they actually come back. So just trying to make sure I got the math right when I'm doing these projections. So let's see. I messed up and put up Dre Greenlaw to talk about Azeez, but let's talk a little bit about Dre Greenlaw's calf strain.
Yeah,
and I guess if you don't mind, we might as well lump in Mike McGlinchey. I think has a similar injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I think with Greenlaw, I think it's pretty remarkable. I mean, people forget just in general, stepping aside from an injury perspective, just how many tackles he has from week to week. Like he just kind of comes in, explain. You look at the box score, you're like, oh, wow, it's like 30 tackles the past 2 weeks. So I think that just given how much he's doing and how much contact he's kind of having. These calf issues, obviously he's dealing with this elbow issue, as well too. Like there's so many of these injuries that kind of act up for him at the position that he's had. And with these issues like a calf strain, and particularly that position, it's simply just the fact of not having people constantly pound into you week to week makes a big difference. And so the bye week can be a blessing in disguise, where suddenly something that may take 3-4 weeks to get better when you're playing it week after week, you have this bye week where you're not having to prepare for a game, you're not taking contact, where it becomes a non-issue. Then he's fine. So I expect that for him, most calf strains at this position just take like a week or 2 to get better. So I don't anticipate him having much of an issue. I think he puts a lot of force across his body, and it's he just simply this bye week will be the best blessing in disguise. I think for McGlinchey, obviously coming off his quad tendon surgery, which I know everyone likes to critique how he's doing. I think number one, it's really remarkable that he's even back playing. 50% of NFL players, based on some studies, don't even come back. And people are like, oh, that's this is modern medicine. Why can't people come back? I mean, you're basically ripping off the tendon that controls your kneecap, and then you're basically sewing it back to the kneecap and expecting it to be just as powerful, So not only are you rehabbing a muscle, you're rehabbing, this area that controls your knee, which then affects everything else. So, in terms of like, yes, you can get calf issues, you can get knee swelling, you can get irritation, and then you're also having people ram up against your leg that you just had surgery on all the time. So, pretty remarkable. He's back, and I anticipate that as the season goes on, he's going to build back up his strength. He's going to build up that confidence. So McGlinchey's statistics are to the observer. I think it's just going to only get better as the season goes on. This is one of those injuries that as time goes on, you get stronger and better. So we'll only see that improve. over time. And yeah, I mean, I think there'd be a different McGlinchey week 14 as opposed to right now.
That's great news. Obviously, key piece to our offensive line there, playing the right tackle position. Next one we should hit on, I think, would be Kyle Juszczyk, Juice.
Yeah, so finger fracture, and I always joke, we break finger fracture. We break the hand into two parts. There's the thumb and everyone else, okay? And, obviously thumb injuries, we know a lot from Jimmy G last year when everyone was talking about his thumb injury, and, Dak Prescott had a thumb injury. So, obviously a big deal for quarterbacks. For a fullback with these kind of finger fractures, if you look at NFL players who have kind of your garden variety finger fractures that aren't thumb fractures in quarterbacks, most people are back in 2 to 3 weeks. So that puts them back and hopefully potentially playing this week or the week after that. A lot of it has to do with can you grip the ball, and luckily for the position he plays, blocking is not going to be impacted. So even if he can't necessarily grip it, he's not going to be doing maybe that 1 or 2 running plays where he gets or being a safety valve to catch the ball. So he should be able to play pretty well with minimal impact on his ability to block and do the things that he does. And this shouldn't be an injury that impacts some of the going forward. I mean, finger fractures are just fixed so easily right now, and physicians and trainers just know how to protect the hands so they can be active. So I think there shouldn't be much of a beat missed by Juszczyk when he's back.
Awesome. And then roughly how long do you think till he's like catching balls again?
Usually, I'd probably say where he could be effective probably 4 to 6 weeks from his surgery.
Okay.
But structure, like if you had to have him catch, like he could probably do it when he comes back. But like before you'd like really call a play for him, you probably say 6 weeks from the surgery. Yeah.
Cool. I guess that's a quick segue. Well, shoot. It came up, so let's just talk about it. Jimmy G's thumb. When it was initially reported last season, it was a grade 3 or whatever the most serious avulsion fracture of the thumb is, and it was reported that it needed surgery. Then the offseason comes, he gets surgery on the shoulder, not on the thumb. What gives there?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I mean, when the descriptions initially came out, it was like, oh, yeah, I mean, Drew Brees had this, there are multiple players who've had this issue. I think the key thing that probably was what drove him not needing surgery is that even though, it's really I think they said that there was some bone that got avulsed off. So when you tear the ligament in and of itself, and obviously none of us know the exact MRI, what was there, but if it's just a pure ligament injury, we know those aren't going to heal. But if there's bone associated with it where the ligament actually pulls a piece of bone off, we know that bone heals the bone pretty well. So even though functionally it's like the ligament is torn, because bone's healing, you can potentially treat that without surgery. But I think even more so surgery, people don't give him enough credit for the fact that he actually played with an injury to his throwing thumb and just taping it together. And regardless of how bad it was or not, there's just pain involved in that. And for a quarterback to go out in cold weather, to have grip effective and to play relatively well, I just don't think he gets enough credit for that. And to be playing with this potential shoulder injury as well too. So I think question his statistics or how effective he is. I don't think people recognize how tough he is. And as an orthopedic surgeon who hears what he's been playing through, he's a tough guy. Like you can't to get out there and play that position. So I think that needs to get recognized a little bit. People can question his performance, but what he did last year, pretty remarkable with the thumb and the shoulder, and also realizing that he also had that high ankle sprain that he played with, I think 2 years ago, that some people said he might have even needed surgery on. So he's had quite the litany of orthopedic issues over the years.
No doubt about it. And I want to be respectful of your time, Doctor. I know you're a very busy man. We're right up on 5 o'clock. Do you need to get going? Do you have time for 1 or 2 more?
I got quite time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, got like 2-3 minutes. I'm good. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Let me get one more. I was curious to know your thoughts on Talanoa Hufanga and his concussion. It seems like, he got concussed, and then it doesn't seem like he's been quite the same ever since. And I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that, with the concussion protocol, I think this is where a lot of the nuances come in. There's like getting cleared to play and then being okay. I think there's two in there nuances with concussions. We have protocols that exist. The NFL has made it to kind of decrease the risk of there being secondary injury or trying to minimize the impact on the brain. But having had a concussion myself and taking care of athletes, like the effects can last for a while. So even though you are functional, it can be harder to exert yourself, and it's just like anything else. Yes, things can get better, like based on a test in 6 weeks, 6 days, but how you are functionally can be different. You come off a hamstring, yeah, you're cleared to go play, but then they're like, why does he not look good for the next couple of weeks? It's no different with a concussion, and I think the protocols are good in the sense of that they try to minimize secondary impact to the brain, but they don't take into account. We don't think of concussions this way of what does that mean for their function for the next couple of weeks, even though their head's not going to get worse. I mean, it's been damaged. It's a muscle. It's an organ just like anything else. So I do agree that sometimes these impacts can last for a couple of weeks, and they're getting micro trauma to their brain that doesn't necessarily show up, in these tests as well too. So hopefully this will resolve over time. And anytime I see a player get a concussion, I always hope it's not going to be something that happens again and again and again over their season. They're regretting it in their 40s. So it's hard. You're trying to protect player safety, but also these players want to be out there and play. So it's a balance.
No, about it. Yeah, it was interesting just because he was evaluated for concussion. They let him come back into the game, and then the next day he had symptoms, and we're starting to see that happen more and more. Hopefully, the bye did him some good too, just like all these guys. I never wish for injuries, but they're just part of the game. So I'm really glad that you were willing to come on and chat with me here about them and share your knowledge with me and all our watchers and listeners. And really look forward to hopefully doing this again sometime. And just thanks so much, Dr. Pandya. I really appreciate it.
No, appreciate it. Thanks, and love to be back on anytime in the future. I appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Well, go ahead and get going, and I will wrap up the show. And thanks again.
Yep, thanks a lot, Ted. Appreciate it. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. So that's pretty much it. Kylie, I saw your question. I just knew we were out of time to ask him one more. I felt like I already forced one extra one on him with the Talanoa Hufanga one, and I feel like an ACL. I think Emmanuel Moseley will probably be ready by the beginning of next season, but you never know when you're going to have a setback. Obviously, look at Jet Mitchell. We thought he would be ready the next year after his, and it ended up taking 2 years. So that's just sort of like only a time will tell type of thing. And I do hope that Emmanuel Moseley is a Niner next year. I think his injury, the silver lining to his injury is that it might make him more affordable. I do think the Niners will do right by Moseley, and I do think that we'll probably make him the best offer of any team in the off season. So hopefully that's the case. And what I'll do is I'll send Dr. Pandya a direct message and just ask him a little more about Elijah Mitchell, or Emmanuel Moseley. So it's not me just pontificating. I do have an orthopedic surgeon who's close in my family, but I am certainly not a doctor. So anyway, I think that's probably a good note to wrap things up. But thanks, Callie, for coming in and joining the show. And thanks to anybody who watches this as we go forward. And we'll be back tomorrow with Aaron Labigan on 49ers First Takes at 3:30 p.m. Pacific and 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.